everyone. This is another Freedom to Feel conversation, and my guest today is Dave Taylor. He's the CEO of LDR Leadership. He has over 30 years of experience in leading teams and organizations. His passions for helping others succeed and reach their full potential is the driving force behind LDR Leadership, a company that specializes in evidence based leadership practices designed to guide businesses towards success. Dave also has an extensive military career. So his full bio will be at the end of this video, but this is my brief introduction for Dave. Now, my favorite question to ask, as I mentioned to you off record, who is Dave Taylor in his own words?
Well, first, thank you for having me. I greatly appreciate the time to talk to you and your followers. It's I really enjoy what you're doing, and this is really special for me because I like talking about stuff typically different than what I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
And when you asked me that question, the first thing that came to my mind is a dad. Is the first thing of what is really important to me and kind of one of my driving values is being a father, and that like many things, it stems from our own childhood. Being
Right.
a child of divorce and not having any relationship with my biological father.
Yeah.
I like to say the one thing he did teach me was how not to be a dad. so,
Yes.
so maybe I should thank him. I should thank
Yeah.
him for that. So when I think about that, it's one, being a father, and then someone who really just tries to do good and is in kind of a constant search for, how do you better yourself? How do you just generally be nice to people and make a difference? Life is short. We've only got one chance at it.
Right.
And if we can impact and make a difference with people, I think that's, to me, those are rewarding moments in time where you've made an impact based off of your own experiences, your own trials, your own hardships. Can you help walk someone through that path? So I think we're all complicated. I'm always constantly in that search
Okay.
of, I'm always in that search of where am I? And as we'll probably talk. Anytime I go to the mountains, it's like, all right, maybe I'll find a little bit of more myself in the next time I'm
Yeah.
out in the mountains.
I love that though. Oh yeah, gosh, you said so much there. So, gosh, being a dad, that's beautiful. What is to be a good father, Dave, from your perspective today?
I think for me, it's being there for my kids.
Yeah.
I realized, and I struggled with it for a while. After my own divorce, it was me, I split time with Susan. So Susan's my former wife. I call her Susan because that's her name. I won't call her my ex-wife because I think that's
Yeah.
kind of like a derogatory statement. Um, it was difficult because there was like no playbook of how to be a dad by yourself. And I finally got to the point where I realized I'm not going to get everything right, but I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to
Mm.
love them. I'm going to be there
Mm.
for them. I will give them the best answers that I can with what I know. I'll try to guide them. But it took a lot. I mean, I struggled just because you want to have all the answers. You realize you can't have all the answers. And I finally said, I'm going to love my kids. I'm going to be there for them. And I'll always let them know that they've got a safe place with me.
Mm.
And no parent is perfect, but you just do the best you can, and shower them with love and support.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. A billion times to that. That's something that I often hear. Not perfect, but present. That's something that in the, let's say in the realm, the field of healing, spirituality, well-being, that has been said so many times. Not perfect, but present. And you just said that, right? Being present, loving them unconditionally. So, how much of that can you do you actually bring over to the person? Like when you said, I try to do good, being a good person. Is that something that you would, in a way, that quality of being present, would you also, would be the same way you would describe somebody trying to be good or being good as a human being?
I think so, and for me, it's kind of an evolution. As you mentioned, my previous life was in the military, and I left that life going on 8 years ago or 7 years ago, a while ago.
Yeah.
And there was kind of an evolution after that of, I think some of it being present, but also, really working on the emotional intelligence aspect
Yeah.
of just yourself, the self-awareness of yourself, but then being empathetic for somebody else and realizing, whatever problems I think I might have in life, there's millions of people that would love to have my problem, right? Whatever
Yes.
my problems are. And just trying to be empathetic and understanding that, there's we never really know what anybody's situation in life is.
Right.
And it's easy for us to judge for whatever reason, right? We all have our
Mm.
biases and it's easy for us to judge, but and of course I'm human, so I still get caught up in those things, but it's trying to catch those things. And then when you're having conversations with people, just try to be present and understand where they're at, even if it's just to
Mm.
listen, even if you've got
Mm.
no answers, but you're just there to hear. Because some people just truly want somebody just to talk to.
Yeah. So true. So, so true. I love the way you said that. Yeah, somebody would love to have our problems. Never heard it that way before. You sound very wise to me, Dave. And that's just the beginning of our conversation. So, where did that come from? Where do you think you've learned the most about maturity as a man? I heard a lot about, I mean, I talked to so many people about mature masculinity and divine living, well being, all that. It always comes down to wisdom, which is basically applying the truth that we know, the knowledge that we have, the experience we have. So most of us know so much, but we apply so little. So you sound like you have been applying a lot of the wisdom that you have learned, the knowledge that you have. So I'm curious to know, yeah, where did this come from? What area of your life? From what
Oh.
experiences?
Well, I can tell you the experience that probably started it was my divorce.
Yeah,
And that was, I mean, I guess separation, divorce, let's just say 2011, right? So
yeah.
that was kind of the moment. Cause at least to me in my life, that was like the first time I quote unquote failed, or I thought I had failed. And it wasn't easy, but I think there's two ways you can look at something like that. Do you choose to dwell on it forever, or do you choose to grow from it?
Hmm.
And the I mean, it started when I started going outdoors in 2014 when I went to Zion National Park. It was kind of like my first hike and first time where I felt like I was living. And then I was still struggling with the divorce. I went and saw a therapist to realize I couldn't do this by myself. Like I just couldn't do it by myself.
Yeah.
And I think really that was the catalyst. Like that moment in time became a catalyst in which I really started to self reflect more on who am I? What are
Right.
the things
Hmm.
that my belief systems were when I was a kid or growing up or in the military to what are they now? And I used to be very black and white. And okay, there's life is gray. You can have black
Yeah.
and white, but once you go through something, your perspective is massively different, at least in my opinion. And so it was just a lot of self work going back to, I think it was, what are we in 2024? So maybe 2019, 2020. Now there was friction between my kids and I. Susan and I had
Yeah.
a huge disagreement, and I felt like I was spiraling. I'm like, something is not right. So I went back to see a therapist at that point. It's like, hey, I need some help. Like, I don't know what's going on.
Hmm.
And really, what I realized is, all these things I thought were other people were actually these my own internal issues that I was projecting out that I had not really dealt with. And then through that, it was just self reflection, and then just fortunate to leave the military and land in a company that we talk about leadership, but within that we talk about emotional intelligence, communication, self awareness, and
Mm.
finding my own values when I left the military was a huge driving factor. And it's to me, it's just one of those things. And then when I go out, I mean, you can see the mountains behind me.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
When I go out there, it's just like I just start to think. I think and just reflect a lot
Yeah.
on life. The person I am now is certainly not the person I was 10, 15 years ago. Like if you ask anybody who knew me 15 years ago, who knows me really well now, they would probably tell you, well, I'm the same. There's probably a lot of differences in terms of how I think and approach probably life and people, I would say. At least I would like to think so, because I'd like to think I'm growing and maturing with
Yes.
time.
Yes, yes, yes. You see, I love that perspective that you have about yourself too, because a lot of times how we think about ourselves that really matters. And I learned that to be true from experience. The more I kind of let other people, my family and everybody else, to kind of tell me who I am or what I am, the more confused I become or I have become in the past. So that's one of the biggest lessons for me.
Yes, I think that is such a powerful statement you said there. I mean, as we grow up, we're often told who we should be, what we should do,
Yeah. Mm,
how we
yeah.
should live, and we take that on for no other reason than we're told that. We're told that over and over again. There's a great book called The Four Agreements that kind of talks about
Oh,
that,
yeah.
right? Where it's like you take on this thing because people tell you
Mm,
this and you believe this is what you're supposed to do. And I think it can really mess with you for a while until you realize, like, well, no, this is not what I want to do. I want to do, this is my life. I want to do this. I
right.
think, yeah, I think that's great that you said that. I think that's 100%. We live up to other people's expectations sometimes of who we should be versus maybe who we are true to ourselves meant to be.
Right. Yes. Another billion yes to that from my own experience. Yes. And I get the confirmation all the time talking to people like yourself, so many people, amazing people I talk to here. So one of the key to me, the keys is the self-reflection. And you just mentioned that going to the mountains, how wonderful it is to just be with your own being, not even thoughts, but your own being, body, mind, heart, and spirit, just being present to that. It's something happens. And you see, we can't really, no one can tell us like what that could feel like. We have to go through that. It's an experience. We have to go through the investigation ourselves. So, but before that, Dave, as I mentioned off record too, I have those questions for you, the open questions about what you do as the CEO of LDR Leadership. So, one of the first questions about success, because you mentioned that there, introducing what you do within the company, you used the word success. I help others succeed. And then you say designed to guide businesses towards success. How do you define success today? What is to be successful?
I think success in general, I mean, it can be so broad, right? I think if you're content, I kind of like put it down to,
Yeah.
are you content with where you are at in life? I have seen a lot of people who chase money, but they're not happy. And I've seen
Yeah.
people do things that they like to do, don't make a lot of money, but they're happy. So I think it's, how do you define success? To me, success is I've got relationships with my kids who are adults in
Mm,
college that to me was always a goal. Like I want to have this in life. I want to have that kind of success. Of course, I want to be financially stable. I think most people do. And I think it's like, how do you define success? It varies.
mm,
Some people, to them, success is purely I've made this much money. That's how they define success in their lives. Or I've accomplished this, I've created this, I've written a book. There's so many things. For me personally, success is I feel like I'm at a place where I can call at this point life a success. I've got great
mm,
relationship with my kids. I'm running a business that I really enjoy, helping others.
yeah.
I've got relationships, friends, family. It's I think it's really how you define it in terms of, can you look yourself in the mirror and feel good about what you are doing and what you've tried? Because even relationships,
Yeah.
they may not all be great, but as long as you have tried your best and you can reflect and say, look, I've done what I can. It takes two people. Then, that's such an interesting question, because you could ask 10 people, as I'm sure you have, and
Yeah.
they've all got different answers in terms of what drives success.
Yes. I love the way you talk about your life in different areas and how now you feel fulfilled in a way with your kids, with the resolution with Susan that you are friends now, and your business, doing what you do. I love what you do. There's, which being here on this podcast, there's something about passing on what you know to others so they can also feel inspired or can take some of that wisdom with them and apply somehow. So this is powerful too, and to me it's part of that success, knowing the truth and then passing that truth on. Do you want to say anything about that, David?
It's great, and I think, even to an extent, there's aspects where I think I have my truth, but I'm still looking for, you said inner peace.
Yes.
And I love that. And I know I could probably say I'm like maybe like 80% inner peace or maybe 70, 75. Right? There's still things in
Yeah.
life that, life is like transitions. You leave one job, you get a divorce, your kids are out of the house, you start prioritizing different things in relationships. And it's like, all right, so how do you, to me, I still think I'm kind of on that path of like, okay, where is the complete truth?
Mm,
There's truth in aspects of my life, but where is it so I'm not where I don't still have some restlessness going on in life.
mm,
So I like what you said with inner peace of while I have a lot of inner peace, there's still this, all right, where there's it's almost like there's still something missing, right? There's still something missing, and
ah,
I don't know where that piece is. So your point about truth and inner
mm.
peace, I think, is absolutely right. And I think as I think about it, it's like, are there different truth puzzle pieces that you put together across your life, and then when you get that last one, that last puzzle piece, then there's like true inner peace.
Yeah, I see your perspectives. And it's an interesting one. And I think most people think that way. Probably. I'm hoping not in a way, because I always begin with with being complete. Like I am complete, I am whole, I'm everything that I'm supposed to be in this moment. So nothing's missing. That's my starting point. At any time, anything I do, it's always anything that I'm involved with, anything. This is it. Like if I die now, if I lose the body now, that's okay. That's it. That's completion. So because of that, it's easier to improve some areas that need to be improved. Then there's sense of calm that I bring to it, the situation, and then I find solutions, and then it's just so much easier when I come from the place of completion.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that. I like that mindset. I might have to put that to practice.
Yeah, you could call it mindset. So my other question for you, Dave, is about leadership. So what are the keys to true leadership, or what is true leadership?
Again, true. If you Google leadership, I think you'll find over a billion
Oh yes.
responses.
Yes.
I think though there's multiple ways to frame it. I think the one way I always would like to frame it in terms of like a leader is the best leaders I ever worked for are leaders I did not want to let down,
Mm,
and I didn't want to let them down because I truly thought they were empathetic, compassionate, tough leaders, but actually cared about you as a person beyond just, hey, you're just a number
mm,
or you're a cog in the wheel,
mm,
but that you actually generally care and have interest, that you're authentic,
yeah.
and you're humble. I think to me, humility is such a powerful thing for leaders. You may know everything, but
Yeah.
well, let me say it. We don't know everything. You may think you know everything, but when you're working with people, it's like how do you understand your weaknesses versus your strengths and where other people might have strengths and how can you complement those? And of course, being comfortable, like saying, okay, look, this is not my strength, like, but this is
Yeah.
yours. Like, how do we work together? And it's always a fascinating conversation to have. Is how do you as a leader get people to want what you want in a good professional kind manner?
Yeah. I love what you said. I mean, I love everything what you said, and in kind, yeah, at the end, in a kind way. That's there's something about I always often go back to truth, being true to yourself, authentic, but also kind, because we can't really impose anything on other people, or that never works either.
Hmm.
So kindness, yeah, that's a big one.
Someone once asked me once, like, when you're in the military or whatever role, like, how do you be a commander? How do you be a CEO? And I would say, like, or how did you get there? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just myself. Like, what I do know is how to be myself,
Mm,
right? I know how to
yeah,
be myself. And I think if we're ourselves, that goes a long way because people are smart. I mean, they know when a leader is just trying to pull the wool over their eyes or just, giving them a line. Are
yeah,
they sincere or are they just saying something because they feel like they have to say something.
Yeah. See, this is a topic that I don't often explore. I do have conversations about this too. And I remember somebody saying what you said, true leaders care about other people sincerely, about everything, not just about making money for them, growing the company, but at the personal level, how are they feeling, with the family, what's happening behind their lives beyond the company. So there's something about that.
Well, and I think it's true. I mean, it doesn't matter what position you are. Nobody does anything by themselves.
Mm,
And I don't care if you're whatever you're running, whatever organization, you're not doing it by yourself, right? I mean,
right.
there's everybody's got a purpose in the organization, and everybody puts things together. I mean, even if you take a sport where people think of, you have a solo golfer, whether he or she is like the top golfer in the world, they have somebody or multiple people
Mm,
supporting them, right? They've got a team of people supporting them, and everybody makes a difference. Nobody that I'm aware of just magically does things all by themselves without having some kind of team behind them that helps them.
right. Yes. So true. Yeah, that's another truth that to me is a very powerful one. Yeah, that we are not alone. We never do anything alone. Yes. Another question I had here, don't know how relevant it is, but I'll ask you. What are some of the misconceptions about leadership that most people have?
I think some, well, I was like equate it to a couple ways. Is like, there's some folks that say, hey, it's lonely at the top.
Yeah. Huh.
And I had someone once tell me, guess what? It's also lonely at the bottom,
Mm,
meaning oftentimes we just think about the actual leader, but we don't think again about, hey, there's the bottom being, hey, maybe you're a brand new entry level worker, a new employee.
right.
It's hard to have a voice. I always found that as something that was, resonated very well. Leadership is not, it's not easy. I mean, we use this kind of quote as, you wanted a bicycle, now it's time to pedal. Like, if you want to be in those
Yes.
positions, you've got to make some tough decisions and tough choices out there. But it's also just incredibly rewarding, right? Because you impact a lot of people, and you may not know it. And I think that's, that might be something that people
Ah,
don't really understand, is you may never hear feedback. Like, most people are not going to come up to you and tell you how great of a job that you did. They'll tell you if you didn't do something right, but it's when somewhere down the road you realize you made an impact on somebody, because as a leader, people are looking at you.
yes.
And if they see you successful, a lot of times they'll try to emulate. They'll try to emulate that as a method. Or, hey, I really appreciate what you did. I remember leaders I had from when I
Yeah.
was 25, 26 years old that made an impact, both good and bad.
Yes. I love this idea that we are guiding one another in a way, if we are really paying attention and present. There's always beautiful qualities about different people. And of course, we are not discussing the topic of, let's say, people with issues, mental health problems, and then they fail to see, become aware even of their own behavior, and then, how other people could perceive them. We talk here a lot about narcissism and sociopath and all that. That's a different conversation. But then again, it's sad to see that leadership positions are occupied a lot of times by those people. How sad it is, I have to say. The word is sad, to see that they are not aware of themselves, and how much harm that they can cause to lots of people.
Yeah, it's fascinating, right? You see some folks, and you're like, how did he or she get
Yes.
into that kind of position, right? And it's often because it never goes, it goes unchecked. It goes unchecked, and or whoever's involved, if it's somebody, who's just worried about revenue and the bottom line,
Yes.
as long as that person is creating revenue, that's ultimately what some, not all, people will look at and
Yes.
focus
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
And it is sad, because there's just a huge impact when you're leading any organization. If culture starts at the top and moves its way down.
Yeah.
So you're right. I agree. It's sad when you see certain things and you're just like, how did this happen again?
It is happening.
Yeah. How
Yes.
did how did this happen?
Yes. And then, yeah, I have to tell you that even Within my home household, like my husband, a lot of times he talked about certain people who have been the president of certain countries, and not to say names, and he admired them for what, how much money they have, the success that they have, and how much more they contributed to the country, like when it comes to money, like making money. And because he owns a company, he felt like that president was better than other presidents. And that kind of saddens me too. And I have to say something. I tell him all the time, oh, I don't want to, um, almost I don't want to have a conversation about that, because I know how unhealthy it is. Just by looking at some people, the way they behave is just not something that we need more in this world.
Yeah, and you're right. It's where somebody sits. If somebody's in a certain industry and that president supports them, do we look
Yes,
do we look
right.
past behavior or actions
Mm,
because hey, it helps my livelihood? It's a tough situation when you think about, you know, the impact we can have. I mean, we could go down a whole list of,
oh, yes.
the impact between that and then the impact of that social media has on, people and how they view different things. It's an interesting kind of time in terms of, who's out there. Of course, I say in this day and age, who would
Yeah.
want to run for office? Because the moment you do, it's like, you know, somebody's coming at you, right? It's like there's no
Yeah.
perfect person out there,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of, yeah. I agree. Yeah, it really is tough.
What I see is that if we could, I mean, that's the goal, I guess, with collective thinking or living, that we could kind of whatever we do, whatever place we come from, we are benefiting ourselves and others at the same time. That's a guiding principle for me for everything I do. Whatever I do, it has to benefit me, somebody else next to me, my family, and then my community, and then who knows, maybe humanity somehow at some level. So it's always like that. It's never only something to benefit me. That would not work. For some reason, my mind, heart, it doesn't really think that way. We can't act from that place.
Well, and that's good, and I'm glad because we don't need more of
Right.
people just acting for, hey, well, what is in my best interest.
Mm,
Um, and I do, like, I think those things because somebody you impact, it's gonna, it trickles down. It may not get as
oh yeah.
wide as we want, but if to me, it's like, hey, if everybody could just impact one person in a positive manner,
Mm,
if we would take the how do I impact somebody positively instead of how do I throw shade at somebody because I don't agree with them,
mm.
just imagine the shift we could potentially see.
That would change everything.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
we might be dreaming here, but sure, it would be great.
oh, well, but it starts with that, doesn't it? Any
Yeah.
dream, anyway. One person, if we can do ourselves, then that's it. I think that's already like from what I come from, that sense of completeness is from that place of
Mhm.
truth. If I can do that, then that's it. That's the world I live in. So I think if we change our own world here, we can change. That's the only possibility for changing any other worlds out there. I really go by that, not as a belief system, but as a truth. So before we talk again about forgiveness and spirituality, again, I have those questions here for you. What services do you offer with LDR leadership?
Yeah, of course. So, as you mentioned, evidence-based programs. So we built it around a team effectiveness model. And when we look at kind of like our values of partnership and mastering the basics and trust,
Yeah.
what I really like to say is, hey, it's like mastering the basics because often we promote people because they're technically competent.
Yeah.
We put them into a position to manage people, but we never train them how to manage people, the tools, the skills, the playbook.
Mm,
I can't even equate this to college. When we look at all the schools we go to for college, we train everybody on like a technical proficiency to then go out into the business world. And because
yeah.
he or she succeeds in that position, we promote them. And then we get frustrated when they're
Uh,
not addressing performance. So, like
yeah.
the flagship is a specific performance management system that we then broaden out to discussing values and leadership, emotional intelligence skills of a leader, communication
Mm,
skills of a leader, decision making, team effectiveness, high performing teams. Just a really focused kind of look of how do you create a high performing culture by putting all these kind of tenets in place. It's really rewarding. It's really enjoyable.
Yeah, it sounds like I love the values in emotional intelligence piece. They caught my attention immediately from where I come from.
Well, I think it's great. It's like you have to be able to lead yourself before you can lead others.
Yes. And that's what came to mind. As soon as you start talking about managing other people, I thought about what about managing ourselves first? That has to
Yeah,
come
and
first.
sometimes that might even be harder.
Right, Dave. Yes. That is harder. That is definitely harder. Especially when we're really truthful, right?
Hmm.
Honest with ourselves. Like you say, there's the article you wrote about looking yourself in the mirror and being honest. And you say, knowing your limitations. Like there's so many things I can do. I do what I do.
Well, what you said, it's important because when we talk about like an outcome we have is providing people a coaching model of how do you address issues and a coaching to win mindset following a model. But a key part of that model is like, let's
Mm,
say I have to address performance with you. I've got to look in the mirror first
yeah.
to ensure I have given you all the tools to be successful. Because it's very easy for me to point at you, the employee,
Right,
than it is to
right.
look at me and say, oh, well, I didn't provide you I wanted you to go dig this long trench, but I gave you a spoon to do it, right? So I'm not setting you up for success.
Yeah,
So it's interesting, right? Because we got to have accountability, but we've got to look at ourselves first and say, did we provide these tools to be successful?
yeah,
And it's not easy to do because people don't like to do that all the
yeah.
time.
So when it comes to forgiveness, who do we forgive first? Ourselves or others? I have heard that a lot before, that we need to forgive ourselves first before forgiving others again. So what is forgiveness? How do you see that idea, concept?
That is such a good question. As you were saying that, I think I think if it's really going to stick and be heartfelt, I think sometimes we have to forgive ourselves maybe first. At
Mm,
least in my case, I think I had to forgive myself first before I could forgive others because I know I forgave that person.
yeah.
But I don't know that that's necessarily, I don't know that's necessarily true. And I guess it depends on what the issue is, right? Is it a joint issue where like, hey, it took two people for sure,
Yeah.
or someone just truly wrongs you and they just came up and they smashed your car or whatever, and you're like, I forgive you.
Yeah. Yes.
Like you're not really have to forgive yourself for that. I don't know. I think it kind of depends on the situation and where you're at and what are the circumstances are
Mm.
before you can do something. I think if it's in a relationship aspect, maybe it's depending upon where it's at. Sometimes I think forgiving ourselves is sometimes harder than forgiving others.
Yes, I have to say from my experience too. I come from trauma, PTSD in childhood, and then later on trying to make sense of all that, that why I was so confused, unhappy, unclear about myself. And then somebody said that to me, I remember, you need to forgive yourself. And then didn't make any sense. Well, I was traumatized. So that was not really, I was abused. So that was not really, why would I forgive myself for that, being abused as a child? That doesn't make any sense. But then, as I went deeper into spirituality, just looking deeper and deeper in that rabbit hole, really not an easy one for some people to go through and to understand the subconscious and then the unconscious mind, which lives in the body.
Yeah.
Then it was easier for me to do that. But then I had to do a lot of work, healing work. Within this general idea of forgiveness, there's something about, I heard something recently that really, really stayed with me. Somebody said, in order to mature, you need to take responsibility for what you're not responsible for. So that kind of related to things that I didn't ask for in my life as a child. And then trauma, living with that, the consequence of that. So I had at some point to say, wait a minute, I need to be my responsible for my own happiness and my own healing. And that's when everything changed without even thinking that way, being clear about using that phrase. But now it makes a lot of sense to me, David, about being responsible for what we're not responsible for, starting there, and then everything could change.
Yeah, I like what you said is like we can choose happiness,
Yes.
right? Like we can choose, we can, no matter how things are. When you talk about PTSD, the very first therapist I went through, she talked about post traumatic growth, which I thought was really awesome. Which is
Mm,
like, how do you grow
yes,
from it?
yeah,
Like, again, a mindset thing of, okay, something happens, we can choose to continue to go down, or we can learn to grow from it.
right.
And I do believe we can choose to be happy, or we can choose to not be. Like, we have a choice. And if something happened to us, we can choose to live in that moment, or we can choose to say, you know what,
Yeah.
I want something different, and I'm responsible for that. Nobody else. Like, you're not going to make me happier. I've got to make myself happy before
Mm,
I can possibly do anything different to improve as an individual. Um, so I mean, specifically this year, I mean, I try to this year. It's like, hey, I'm going to be more optimistic and grateful for just things, because I think that perpetuates into our daily lives. If we walk around feeling horrible,
mm.
well, then we're probably going to be horrible. But if we walk around trying to be grateful and thankful, I think that permeates throughout.
Wow. Yeah. That's another beautiful practice, I would say. It is a state of mind to gratitude. Yeah, that's always my started point after that one about being complete and whole. That will be gratitude. I mean, that arises
Yeah.
anyway. It's joy, peace, and gratitude arises from that place. And I'm already there. So, yeah, I love that you mentioned that. For those, I keep saying that over and over again for people around me too. Gratitude, such a powerful practice. So, was there a moment where you felt like you had forgiven Susan and she had forgiven you? Was there a moment in time where this was a, let's say, a process, ongoing
Yeah, it
process?
was probably, it's probably a process. So I think, like I said, in 2019,
Yeah.
prior to that, I'd gone through this transition, the special operations transition course called the Station Foundation. And during that, the guy who runs it, his name's Kevin, his wife would talk about her viewpoint and perspective of being a spouse in the special operations community.
Mm,
And I remember the first time I heard her say that, as I was going through as a participant, it was really impactful, because I'd never heard, anything I heard from Susan at that time was whatever. That's the mindset.
yeah.
The second time I went through it, it really impacted me. I started thinking, like, wow, no wonder it was hard, right? I just started thinking it was harder, and then,
Yeah.
like I said, she and I had this big kind of argument. I went and saw a therapist, and after a period of time of seeing this my therapist, it just, like, it kind of hit me, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I've never, like, I wanted something different, and I remember thinking, why is Susan still mad at me to an extent? Like, looking at me like I was the same person
Yeah.
that she remembered. But then I realized I was looking at her as the same person. We were not
Mm,
looking at each
same.
other as, we are different people. We have grown and matured. And I sat down and wrote like a 6-page letter to her,
Right.
and just kind of laid everything out, at least from my perspective. And really, it was kind of like, hey, look, this is,
Yeah.
we both have our own faults, and we both kind of accepted our responsibility in it. And it was truly like the most beautiful, amazing thing, because it was like I sent it to her almost, 4 or 5 days later.
Mm,
It's like it's like I gave her what she finally wanted from me, which was just recognition that it wasn't her fault, but
yeah.
that I had a role in it. But for me, for so long, it was easy to point the finger to her. And then after that, it was like we both put it behind us. We're like, okay, I've owned my part, you own her part, or she owns her part. Her husband's an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And now we go to football games, we tailgate, we spend holidays together, we can laugh about the past. And ultimately, the kids benefit, right?
Mm,
The kids benefit. There's no, there's far less anxiety and stress for them, although there's probably still difficulties. But I had to forgive myself, as we talked. Like, I had to be okay with resisting all the things I wanted to resist,
yeah.
and blaming her and saying, okay, these are my own issues. Like, uh, I did what I did because I thought I was the best, but it didn't work. And so it's probably a long process, but it's to me, it's
Yeah.
probably one of, outside my kids, it's one of the prouder moments I think in my life to be able to say, if I have an issue about something, I can call her up as a friend now and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
Um, to me, I'm proud of that because I think in the long run, our kids are going to benefit from it the most.
Oh, yes. I have no doubt about that. Yes. You see, that's a beautiful way of thinking. I mean, firstly, you have to be open. And I love how humble you were to be open to ask for help in the first place. A lot of people, they close down, they think they can solve everything on their own. And as we talked before, we are not alone. We live here in a world full of people for a reason. So that's really beautiful, Dave, that you're open. And then you see, by solving conflicts, we just help everyone. Isn't it wonderful? I mean, solving
Mhm.
within, and then you see the results of that outside.
Yeah, and even if we don't agree, like I felt like when we were
Yeah.
younger, there was a time where you could disagree with somebody, and it was okay. Like,
Yes.
okay, we may not agree, but that doesn't mean okay. Well, I don't agree with you, therefore I think you're the most evil person out there. It's
Yes.
like okay, well, I don't agree, but I can see I can see your viewpoint. I may not agree, but okay, I can see that, and I agree. I don't think there's enough of looking at other viewpoints and then figuring out, okay, well, where is the commonality, and can we find some kind of commonality,
Yes.
and then try to build off that. And again, as we said earlier, like I realize, there's always unfortunately conflict in the world since the creation of the planet or whatever, however you believe man and woman came to be. There's always been conflict, and unfortunately, there's probably going to continue
Yeah.
to be. But if we could just ask questions and understand where somebody's coming from and have that empathy of like, okay, I can see why that probably upsets you. I think that can go a long way.
It has been my own experience. Yes, it really does. That might have something to do what your company does, emotional intelligence. That might be. You see, because that has to do a lot with fear too. I notice when we become judgment, we disconnect, we automatically push away and try to escape from something with anger or whatever hatred.
It probably does, and I tell you, like one of the best things about the business is as we create different courses, it's like making me better. Like me and my operations officer
Yeah.
partner in crime, Vern, and I, as we do these things, like you realize one how hard it is,
Mm,
but you just learn. It's almost like you see the growth of like things you would say in the past, and maybe you didn't catch it
yeah.
for a while, or you didn't catch it at all to as you increase your emotional intelligence, it's like, all right, maybe you said something, and then as you said it, you're like, you want to bring the words back, or you catch it earlier, or you realize, like, okay, that upset me, but what really upset me? Or, are we lacking the self awareness or the self management aspects of,
Mm,
okay, let me let me check myself and do a little bit better control. And let me do some breathing exercises. So I mean, that's been and breathing is so powerful, as
oh
you
yes.
probably know from what you do. Breathing is an amazing aspect that a couple years
Yeah.
ago I never would have even thought about, but now it's like, all right, I need to breathe and let the amygdala hijack not occur. Let my rational brain take over from my
Yes.
rational brain. So that's a great part about growing a business and creating things. As you read and study, you become better for
Mm.
it. At least I think I have anyway from it.
Yes, it sounds like very much. And I love that. What's not to love about that, Dave? Thank you so much for being you, for being open. It's wonderful to see men playing this role because a lot of times women, we are very good at it, it seems to me. Some of us, of course, not all of us, we are more intuitive. So we can go deep. It's easier for us to be open and go deeper into certain things without fear. But for men, it's different. Even the way you have been brought up and educated, well, how to behave, and the brains are different anyway. But so it's really beautiful to see
Oh
that.
yeah, my
Thank you.
pleasure.
I have to thank you because that
No,
helps
my
everyone.
pleasure.
That
My
helps
pleasure. I
everyone.
think a lot of men and in my own life, you grow up with this belief you're supposed to have this armor
Yeah.
on and never show emotions or nothing bothers you. And I think it builds up to an
Right.
unhealthy aspect at some
Mm,
point. versus realizing the ability to share things, I think makes people stronger, not
Yeah.
weaker.
So we're almost at the end, guys. I would talk to you forever. Um, on the topic of freedom, you wrote the LinkedIn post about the freedom of the mountains and giving back. So that again, spirituality makes me think about spiritual things in a sense of truth. So spirituality to me is truth. It's evidence to it's very scientific. It's nothing like it's the invisible to me is very scientific. There's so much I sense that without my eyes even being, I close my eyes and I can see so much more a lot of times with clarity than with my eyes open. So that to me is an evidence that the invisible world is really powerful. So talk to me about for a moment about your experience in the mountains again. And what is that feeling? You talk about not thinking or you had less, let's say, less of the day-to-day thinking. So is that something that we supposed to run away from, trying to escape from too, those day-to-day thoughts? Or in a way not give attention to certain thoughts. That's been my practice, not giving attention to everything that comes to mind.
Yeah, for me, the decision to retire from the Army occurred on the first mountain that I climbed. That's where I made the decision.
Yeah.
It was just like a life changing experience. And I think for the mountains, to me, it's like where I just feel free. Like I just feel like this is where I can be. And I climb with a great friend of mine named Eric Shaw. I met him years ago. Oftentimes, he and I will be the only ones out in the mountains.
Hmm.
And when I say stop thinking, it's almost like what I really mean by that is you're almost forced to turn off the noise or tune out the noise on day to day life, right? Like phones aren't there, we're not connected.
Yeah.
You're out there and you may be out there for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a long couple days, and
Yeah.
you have to you just think, right? And to me, it's like it's an incredible inner peace and clarity
Mm.
when you're in the mountains. And I would always say, like, I don't know what I'm going to think about. I don't go there with an intention to think about something. It's whatever comes to me is what I'm going to think about.
Right.
But I often find as I go into the mountains with whatever it is, and there's certain things I leave in the mountains. Like I don't want
Yeah,
this.
I
And then
love
when I
this.
come out, I'm going to bring these things. And I always think I come out a better person
Yeah.
because I think for
Mm.
whether it's leaders, it doesn't, you don't even have to be a leader. I think it's so important for people in today's connected society to find a way to truly just disconnect
Mm.
and be with your own thoughts. And for me, the mountains, I mean, there's times where I'm like, I got to go to the mountains. Like I have to go because it's just my mind needs that break where it's just
Yeah.
I just feel free. I just feel like that's where I'm like most content and happy, and my mind is just
Yeah.
kind of calm. But then when I come out, I just feel better for it. I just feel better for it because I can focus on what's important and really think, and then come back and try to put those in place of how do I want to improve or change going forward from this last experience.
Yeah. So you're connecting deeper with
Mm.
your own self. That's what it is. A sense of inner connectedness, which I have heard so many times from people in nature. They often talk that way. My own experience too. I love the ocean, the beach. That's my connection, the water. But when it comes to nature, there's something about the water. But for you, the mountains, and from people that I talk to too, they love the trees. There's something about nature, and I wonder if that's because nature doesn't think, doesn't seem to have a mind, right? That's constantly making noise. It might
Yeah,
be
and
that.
it's just so peaceful. Like anytime I'm out in the mountains, and if we're fortunate enough to summit and you get up there, it's just like you just realize like how small you are in the grand scheme of things, right? Like
Hmm.
it's like you feel it's
Yes.
these mixed emotions of like feeling powerful and strength and
Hmm.
accomplished for standing on top of this mountain peak,
Yeah.
but then looking out and realizing, yeah, but I'm really small in this world, and there's got to be something bigger. And you think you'll see an old tree, like you said. I'm like the history that tree has probably seen, and
Yeah.
it is. I just think it's just yeah, it's so hard to put in words. It's my happy place. It's just truly my happy place.
Yeah. And I'm happy for you that you found that connection. Yeah. For some people, it's not. It's not possible, or
Yeah,
they
no, they
have
have
not
not
found
found
it
it.
yet. So yeah, I noticed that with some people that I have around me. So I love the way you said that in your post, exactly what you said. It's also when I think there has to be something bigger than us in this universe. And you say, I don't know what it is. And we don't have to know because it's a feeling. It's something that we know from experience. So we don't have to have even words for it. That's even more amazing. That's when I think about spirituality, that's exactly what I think about. Something that you know to be true, but you don't know how to explain it, and you don't how to
Yeah,
replicate that even. But it's
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
here, right? That's
yeah.
spiritual to me.
It's like I wish I could bottle up the mountains and like bring them home,
Yeah.
so they just open
Yes.
it up when I need it.
Yes, that would have been, yeah. I mean, it is possible, isn't it, Dave? There's something that stays. I don't know, the flavor, the perfume of that stays, though. I noticed that. Once you have seen something that's that powerful, we cannot
Yeah.
unseen.
You can't. I mean, and something I've started doing less of is taking pictures when I'm out
Ah,
and
yes.
just enjoying the moment because, you can take up and you get somewhere,
Yeah.
you're taking photos,
Yes.
but you're not in the moment, So if I take people who have not climbed
Mm.
before, what I usually tell them is, okay, take your pictures now, put it away, and then just
Yes.
enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
Because, I'm like, there's maybe three people on this peak or whatever. I'm like, look, you're the only people on this planet looking at
Yeah.
this view right now, and it's beautiful. Enjoy it. Because a camera will never do its justice, but the memories in your mind will always be there.
Yes. What a beautiful point. Yeah. Ah, what's not to love about your wisdom? So, Dave, we're almost at the end. I want to thank you again for everything that you have been doing. And the most amazing thing to me is being open to your own truth and sharing that and doing what you do with your company, too. I love what you said about learning. By doing what you do, it's also an opportunity to learn, to grow yourself. And it's always the place to come from, because we can't really, I really know that to be true. If we don't change ourselves, we can't change
Yeah,
anyone.
I agree.
Okay, so I have your website, ldrleadership.com, and I have the LinkedIn. I'll have both links on the podcast notes. But my last question for you is this one that
Uh
I
oh.
usually ask everyone. What three yes,
Uh
right.
oh.
Right. What three experiences you wish everyone to know before they die, before they lose the body?
Oh wow. Well, you throw the tough one there at the end. Okay, so what comes to my mind? I would say I don't know how to put it into words, but the feeling, the feeling that I get of the freedom of when I'm in the mountains, like, and you know that feeling, like if you have a place, you just know
Oh, yes.
that is the place. So I think that is one, that feeling of freedom. I think
Yeah.
the the sense of true love, whatever true love is defined to somebody, whether that's the love you have for your own kids, the love you have for a spouse,
Yes.
that deeper connection would be one. And I think the other, I'm just going to again go with what's coming into my head right now, is
Yes.
everybody should take a moment in time to understand what their true values are. And I think a lot of people have never
Mm.
spent the time really knowing what their values are. They're told what their values are through their business, their company, their organization, but have never stopped and said, hey, these are my 3 to 5 values. Because I think that's just a really powerful way to kind of be your guiding north, or your true north in life. So I went with the three things that came into my head as you put me on the spot for that one.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. I mean, what's not to love about all of them? And it's an interesting thing that I hear that every time love is always on that list, always on that list, always. It's interesting to see. Like everyone, I interview over 1,000 people, and I see love always to be there. What would you experience before you die? You must, I must have experience. Love, it's always there. So thank you for saying
Yeah,
that.
you're welcome. Well, I think you're right. I think, as you said it earlier when we were talking, is people were, I think, meant to,
Mm,
I don't think people were meant to probably be alone. There's a reason. So whatever the love is,
mm.
find it and embrace it.
Yes. That to me is a true nature. Some people, they kind of think about true nature as being like the instincts, survival and all that. But to me, it's always love. We're here to love. We're here to connect in a deeper sense. Thank you so much again, Dave, and we'll talk soon. I would love to be in touch. But for now, we'll end here, but I would love to be in touch after this interview, of
Yes.
course. But take good
You
care of
too. Thank you
yourself
for
for
having
now.
me.
Bye.